Hey guys, I'm here with Chief Jones, and we're going to have a chat this evening about those dreaded, evil police unions. So, Chief has a little bit of insight into how they are, what they are, why they work, and he's going to share it with us tonight. Chief, go ahead.
Yeah, uh, unions when they originally come about was for simple, standard, everyday things. You had cops that were making minimum wage, and some of them below minimum wage because they had less than five officers. So, you know, that made sense, to have some insurance, basic uh, things that everybody else in the workforce was getting, and to make it to where you could not arbitrarily just come in one day and say, "We don't like the way you look, you're fired." So there actually had to be a valid complaint or complaints against you, and they had to rise to some level of significance before you could be fired. So the unions, they actually just had several officers in a department that would belong, and then the union would go and talk to the council or city manager and say, "Hey, we just want you guys to pay them a fair wage for what they're doing. And this is what some of the other agencies are paying in the area. We want y'all to come up to something comparable that you can do. And let's start some kind of increase where they get a cost of living adjustment and a merit if they deserve it. And let's have a bottom rung here." So that was good. I agreed with that 100%.
Yeah,
So,
and people are going to say I'm anti-union because I'm picking on the police unions, and I'm not anti-union. I'm not at all. I'm all for a fair and safe working conditions and fair pay. Got no issue with that at all. Okay, but
right.
when they as they progressed, Chief will get to this in a second. I'm jumping ahead, but as they
Yeah.
progressed and they got more powerful, they started doing they got started getting into politics, and they started getting into collective bargaining and basically making it where you couldn't fire bad officers. And if a chief can't get rid of a bad officer, we all suffer. We all suffer, right, Chief?
Oh, absolutely. I've been on both sides of the coin. I've been the guy that need a union to make sure I was treated fairly, because, for example, in Florida, your commanding officer can demand you tell them what happened at the scene of a crime, and you actually have to incriminate yourself. So the law passed that said if they force you to say it, then they can't use it against you. Everybody else has a right to remain silent. But if you do that, you can be fired for insubordination. So they had to have a wiggle room, which I thought there should have been some other compromise. But uh, I've been on both sides, and then I've been on the side where I'm the administrator and I got a bad cop, and some union rep and the organization says, "No, that doesn't rise to this level, and this doesn't rise to this level." And it took me close to a year working very diligently, uh, detailing things to get rid of an officer. Uh, he started off pretty good, and they used to call him ambulance chaser. I mean, he seen lights going anywhere. He just had to go see what he was. And
Nothing
he,
wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. If he's there to try to lend a hand.
but just like he was supposed to be on duty one night, and I get a call to come in as the chief. Your officer isn't on duty, and we got a rape in progress. So I have to go there. Well, he claimed, "Well, I was feeling sick and I didn't want to wake you up, and I just went home and told them they could call me." Yeah, well, first of all, you didn't have authorization to do that. Second, you didn't notify me. You violated, this woman could have been raped and murdered. I said they were actually breaking into her house, and I got there before they got to her door in the bedroom. And I said, so I got both guys successfully arrested and taken to jail. But if I hadn't have been there thinking you're at work, she could have been raped or murdered. Okay. That was an automatic termination, automatic. Well, they threatened to sue the city for this, this, and this. And so the city decided they wanted to flip, and they said, well, you just need to work with him. I need to
So they
work
got
with him.
arbitration. They got arbitration.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I said, so should we let the lady get raped and killed because he decided he didn't feel good and went home? He knows to call me and tell me, and then I make the authorization and I get another officer on duty or I go do it. Okay.
Makes
I
sense.
said, that left us wide open. Okay. I said, now, if I hadn't have been there, what would have happened? That lady would have got raped and maybe killed, and she would have turned around and sued you for your failure in your fiduciary responsibility to patrol and take care of the citizens. So now y'all want me to keep on a bad cop. I said, what's going to happen is he's going to escalate and do more bad things. He's going to get you sued. He's going to get you sued by more people and at a higher rate, and then they're going to put my name in it because it's a chain of command all the way up. And I'm going to get cut off because I'm going to say, look, here's the policies. He signed these. He read them. I gave him a test on them. I tried to terminate him several times. The city told me I couldn't. So I did everything I could. So I'm going to get out. Then it's going to jump over me to y'all. So in the 90s is when this thing started to swirl out that they wanted you to have hazardous duty pay. I think it's always been hazardous, but
Yeah.
it was just a way for more money. If you had any more certificates, more money. You got a take home car. You got a uniform allowance, a shoe allowance. They would give stipends for things, and a stipend, what was told by legal counsel to me, it's non taxable. It helps you for miscellaneous. But here's what I begin to see. You got a smaller department here, one here, all over the place, and they have anywhere from 2 cops to 10 cops, and they don't necessarily have no union there. Then you got somebody that's got 40 plus cops in their big union. Well, if you go back and look at the statistics for the small departments versus the bigger departments, union versus non-union, it's way easier to terminate a bad cop and bring criminal charges on them in a non-union organization. You still have to have your facts. You still have to go through a due process. But I actually was working under the command of a bad chief of police who destroyed evidence, tampered with other evidence, and I contacted the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, it's the second command, and said, hey, he's committing felonious crimes. I've talked to the sheriff about it. I've talked to the city manager, and the city manager's wanting to make it go away. Well, he's going to handle it as an administrative action. Okay, so the city manager's going to turn 2 serious felony crimes into a piece of paper and say, don't do that no more, bad boy. I said, look, people died in this crash, and he was related to one of these people that would have been charged. So he was covering up their actions so that they wouldn't go to prison. And you're going to turn that into like a week suspension or something when he should be going to prison for years and years and should never be a cop again. But they let it fly. Then that's when I found out about these administrative determinations. We deem it to be this. So it doesn't matter if it's capital murder. Well, we deem it to be disorderly conduct. Really? So these unions work behind the scenes. And don't think that this union over here doesn't call this union over here and this union, and they got 6 or 8 big union people, and they go out to eat somewhere or go out to play golf, and they say, well, here's what we need some help with. Here's what we need some help with. Uh, I can just hear right now, well, Mr. David's a dirt bag and a doo-doo bird, and we need your help over here to hook him up this way, and we'll hook him over here, and we're going to frame him up and box him off. And that's the thorn in our side that keeps showing what we're doing. He's actually putting out there to hundreds of thousands of people what we're doing. And if he keeps going, more cops are going to get criminally charged. More cops are going to go to prison. So we got to flip this around and hook him up. I mean, I figured out what's going on a long time ago. They're trying to handle you, but it's not just you. I mean, anybody that points out their wrongdoing suffers. Okay, just like Patrick. Okay, he found the number 2 guy in the union up there in Oklahoma City sleeping, allegedly. They look pretty asleep to me, but anyway, so they turned everything on him. Tim up in Oklahoma, he's big in the open carry up there, and they had to do something to shut him down. So if you don't play their game the way they like it, personal preference, then they figure out a way to criminalize you or make you look bad to where you don't have credibility, and they go to great extremes to make that happen. What's your thoughts?
Oh no, I agree with you. Everything you say is things I've been saying for a long time, and you're talking about how the unions are communicate. Most of them don't just communicate, they're related to each other, because you'll have an officer go from one city to another city working, and there's cross pollination there. Or like in Louisiana, you're not a cop in Louisiana unless you're hooked up with the Fraternal Order of Police. You're not a politician in Louisiana unless you're connected to the Fraternal Order of Police, because that's just how it is. They have that much power in the FOP. And of course, we know who this number 2 guy is at the FOP now. Old Joe Gamaldi from downtown. Remember? Hey, if you're talking bad about our officers, we got your number. We're coming for you. Yeah. Okay.
If you stir the pot, we'll come after you.
Yep.
Right after that, I watched this and I timed this out. You stand out there, I'm stirring the pot. What happened? You went to jail. Like pretty dang quick,
Oh, we've got the emails from one of the higher ups in the police union that works in another division of the Houston Police Department, was emailing the district attorney asking them why they hadn't charged me. Why aren't you charging this guy? Why aren't you charging this guy? If they didn't have anything to do with the investigation, they had already investigated it 25 years ago or 20 years ago and determined it was unfounded. Now they're hollering, why aren't y'all charging this guy?
Yes. In fact, we've had cold cases, and I've worked on a lot of cold cases. And some of them, the older they are, actually, the easier they are to solve if there's something there. If there wasn't nothing there to begin with, then there still ain't going to be nothing. But if you had a lot of loose ends, you didn't close it, you just put it inactive. Well, in your case, like in yours, they actually closed it as unmerited, unfounded. Okay. To take an unfounded and unmerited case and open it up and say it's a cold case, there's a lot of things going on behind the scenes to trigger this event that would never happen to anybody else in any other circumstance. Okay. You're the messenger. The message remains the same, but their deal is if we kill or cage up the messenger, it'll stop. No, it'll just make it go off the hook. It'll be 100 times worse. If they try and put you in a cage, people from all over the country is going to come out, and a lot of people's watching this. And they're watching the judges, they're watching the DAs, they're watching the administration of police, city managers, city councils, and serious things are coming for Texas in the near future. Now, I've made a recommendation to my representatives and said, in the 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s, and on up into the 80s, you had to provide your own personal bond. Okay. Bonds or self-insurance where you had to put like a certain amount of money that was sealed. There were some different ways to do it, but it meant if you made a bad arrest, false imprisonment, you battered somebody, you shot somebody, and it was real bad, there was money for compensation automatically. Okay. If you did something and your bonding company insurance said, we're going to pay this off, Well, you really didn't have no say so. I mean, if they didn't have to, they wouldn't. But if they did, and you went somewhere else and something happened, guess what? Nobody would bond you, so you couldn't be a cop nowhere. Okay, and then when they put it in the government code, and the government started paying a blanket insurance coverage for up to 200 officers or 300, whatever they got, so many millions of dollars for one thing or another. Then if you had a bad officer, he could be bad, and if he was in the union, he could be real bad. And you could have to put up with him and deal with him, and the public deal with him. He just becomes more emboldened. Good cops, I talk to a lot of cops across the country all the time. And I said, what do you think about having to pay your own bond? Wait a minute now, the government's paying for that now. I said, well, what if the government reimbursed you for your bond? The point is, it's an individual bond. And the good cop said, yeah, I'd do that because that would get rid of the bad cops, because one or two dings, serious dings, they can't be bonded. They can't be a cop no more. If the city and the county's paying for it, they just keep paying out millions and millions and millions and millions of taxpayer dollars. You and me's paying for bad cops against our will.
Well, no, and that's what I've been saying all the time. Just personal liability insurance.
Correct.
Okay. Just malpractice insurance, just like the doctors have. Okay.
Dentists.
And then if dentists, veterinarians,
Sure.
So you go out, you screw up, your insurance pays for it. You go out and screw up enough times, your insurance says, we're not going to carry your insurance anymore. They move you to a high risk group. And then if you screw up, you got no insurance, you can't be a cop. I think that is a wonderful idea. I think it's perfect. Perfect solution.
Right. Well, here's what I'm told. The representatives I talked to said, Chief, to be honest, we really, really need this. But the FOP and other police unions will come to the legislature. They'll tell all their people to wear uniforms. It'll be a sea of blue. And they'll say they're trying to hurt officers and stuff instead of trying to make them accountable. Said, so we got an uphill battle because they got a strong arm in the legislature. They're not just enforcing the law, they're forcing us to make the law that they want and interpret the law they want.
Sure.
So they're getting into tyranny. They're pushing the law and enforcing the law and judging. They're becoming judge, jury, and executioner, and they're having this incredible immunity. Okay? So they do horrid things to people, and it just kind of gets swept under the rug, or a mountain this high gets to be like this here, But if they have to bond themselves, you're going to find, like there was officers in the 70s, even back then, that'd get one big ding or a couple small dings, and they went into a higher category, and they had to pay 3 to 5 times as much on their bond. I mean, it was exponentially high, and cops wasn't making that good of money, so the bad cops just drifted away. Nobody had to fire them. Their record just drifted away because the insurance company wasn't going to take it.
And the only people that would oppose that, okay, because it's not costing them anything.
Right.
The city's going to pay for the first tier or whatever, okay? Mm-hmm. And so it's not costing them anything. The only thing it's going to cost them is if they're bad cops, it's going to cost them their job down the road, because a bad cop is a crooked cop and can't stay out of trouble. He's always going to do wrong and make bad decisions. So the only people that would oppose that are bad cops.
Of course. See, I know some cops that I'd say they're middle of the road. They ain't really good, they ain't really bad. They're just there collecting the check and do what they got to. But they're not opposed to going south, I don't think. And when I talk to them about this, no, well, I'll fight that all the way. I'll fight that. I said, for self-preservation, I said, if you're a good cop, bonding yourself should be no problem. I've had bonds. I've never had a bond challenge in my life. I've never been sued in the line of duty. I've never even been co-sued, like where there's people around me and I just happen to be in the chain of command. Nothing, never. So, you know, some people say, oh, he was a bad cop. Well, really? Usually bad cops do get sued, whether they're successful or not. They do have a lot of problems. And, you know, I've worked in some really big jurisdictions and I've worked in some tiny jurisdictions. But I stayed as long as I wanted to stay wherever I stayed. Now, I know they talk about gypsy cops, but gypsy cops are the ones that get fired here, fired there, fired something. You know, they just keep moving around, you know. So, and that bond will stop bad gypsy cops, because you may have a chief or a sheriff, constable, marshal, somebody that wants you on their department really bad because you got a lot of years experience. And then when they check on your bond, it says unbondable. I mean, they're like, oh my God, if you're not bondable, why'd you even come here and apply? You know, that, I guarantee, if that took place within 90 days in Texas, I don't know about everywhere else, but in Texas, if that took effect 90 days later, you'd find a lot of police departments missing 5 to 10% of their agency pretty quick, because all these insurance companies say, hey, we you know, ain't going to bond you no more. So that would leave the good cops. Right now, I got good cops calling me here and there, and they either tell me go do this, or they say, hey, you know, David with News Now Houston, I think y'all are pretty good friends. Yeah, tell him, so him or some of the other crew can go out and catch these. So we got good cops calling us because their city manager or the sheriff won't fire somebody. Even when they can, they won't do it. They won't take that action. So they got to be anonymous. And this are what the good cops are doing. Hey, Chief, these guys are in a clique and they're down here selling dope or shaking people down. They need to get the word out on this. Then I turn around and call some of my people and tell them behind the scenes, and they go try and expose this in news reporting.
Well, and this is one of the things that really upsets crooked cops, you know, is that I do have good guys on the inside that feed me information, feed me documents, feed me, you know, whatever I need. The 2018 classified DHS memo that everybody's passing around now. Guess who got that and passed it out? It was me.
That's right.
You know, there's tons of examples I can give, but that's what really worries the crooked cops. That's what makes me such a big target, is because the good guys come to me, and they can't have that. They can't have the good guys being able to get word out, because I don't care what anybody says. These days, I really think the good guys are outnumbered by a large margin. I really believe that.
Right. And that would cause T-Cole to change the academia, where right now, if you go to an academy, they show all the laws that benefit police over here. So say you got a particular law and they show some case law that applies to that, and they got a couple of cases that seem to figure it, but they don't tell you the 12 over here that said no, 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 no. And they know it exists, but they're teaching a one-way street. They're teaching you how to cover your rear end. They're teaching you how to cover your jurisdiction.
Yeah.
They're teaching you, hey, they use this word, if you have to get creative in your writing, which is another word for tell a lie that you can't be caught in, be a creative writer so we can make this case and we all look good. And then on the other hand, you got some administrators that I got called in. Hey, Jones, I was going over the activity report and I noticed you only had like a few citations for the entire week. And your point is, well, it doesn't look good. The other officers have 15 to 18 tickets. You look way out of sync. Don't look like you're doing your job. Are you going to tell me in this whole city the people ain't speeding or running stop signs or whatever? I said, no, but I got 40 warning tickets. Well, warning tickets ain't what I'm talking about. Oh, so you actually need me to create some revenue. That ain't what I said. You're putting words in my mouth. And I said, well, tell me what the words are then. So I said, I tell you what. I said, if you want to fire me, demote me, or do something because I'm not writing enough tickets, go ahead. That's what lawsuits are about. You're trying to make me a revenue machine.
Yep.
I got into it with the city manager one time when I was chief, and he said, I don't care if you write them, but you better get your guys up writing these tickets. We can't pay the bills. Look, Mr. City Manager, the money for law enforcement comes out of the Treasury. Whether we write one freaking ticket or 1,000 or none, we make 50 arrests a day or zero. It's the taxpayer that pays for us to be there. Are you going to tell the ambulance driver they got to go run over somebody so they got somebody to haul the hospital to run up a bill for the city? I mean, come on, this is stupid. And he started trying to tell my guys and got them scared. Well, Chief, we're having to write these tickets. I said, look, he has to fire me to fire you. So I'm the first one to go. Don't write tickets that ain't right. Don't write no tickets with feathers hanging off the end. Don't mistreat people. One day it might be them people's going to protect your tail feathers. When they tried to get rid of me, the city manager, because he hated my guts, had 170 something people in a line around the building for 5 or 10 minute conversations with the city manager. And several of them I put in jail. When a man you put in jail once or more times, it's in a line to say, this is the guy that needs to be our chief. I think you've done something. I mean, yeah.
You got anything else before I go? Before we wrap up?
No, I just want to say thank you for having me and thank you for doing this. And let's get this information out and change the laws, and it'll change everything.
Sounds good.
God bless you.
All right. That's it, guys. Y'all be safe, and we will see you again.